Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun, and tonight the topic we'll be considering is thinking professionally, stepping up in human resource management. Our facilitator for tonight is Tommy Kembi, and I would like to read his profile very quickly. Tommy is an associate Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. He's an HR professional with over 5 years experience in retail, consulting, hospitality, and renewable energy industries. He specializes in performance management, learning and development, compensation and benefits, career coaching, and organizational structure design. He began his career as an HR generalist in the hospitality industry before he took a role in L&D. Ladies and gentlemen, he has also worked in consulting industry as HRBP and training consultant. He's currently the Human Resource Manager of Blue Wave New Energy Technology, a renewable energy company with a vision to light up Africa. His lifelong goal is to build an ecosystem that equips people with the required life skills that helps them thrive in their profession. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking to us tonight on the topic Thinking Professionally, Stepping Up in HR, I present to us Tommy Kembi. You have the floor, my brother.
Thank you so much, sir. I want to begin by appreciating you, sir, for the privilege for giving me the opportunity and also sharing your platform to me and to everyone that have indicated interest. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves and also build ourselves up. I do not take it lightly. I do not take it for granted, and I'm very, very grateful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in to our training for tonight, talking about thinking professionally, stepping up in HR. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking more from my heart than from the slide. The slide is just a guide so that we know what we are going to be addressing, what we are going to be speaking to, because I deem it as something that we should talk about, something that we mostly struggle with, especially when we are in our early stage in HR career, when we are transitioning from the early stage to the mid-level roles. We have that struggle of how we can begin to become relevant in our various organizations and how we can lead in the various organizations and how our voices will be heard. And that was the reason why I thought of this topic. I have a lot of people who are well advanced in this profession who can teach us the core technical aspects. I think it's necessary that we address the base, the grassroots, right? Because I know that this is a soft skill that if it is properly learned, it can take us to anywhere we want to go in our HR journey. So first off, we are going to be looking at the learning objective, and basically we are going to start by understanding why HR needs to step up, where we stand as at today, our role into this business world. We are going to look at talking about HR as a business partner. We're also going to look at the key influencers um, that can affect or influence our goals, our growth into the strategic HR. And we also need to look at the place where we need to expand our influence. We look at the urgency, and we also look at what I call the strategic HR playbook, and we bring it to a close. So by the end of this training, I want to believe that we'll all be able to recognize the shift in HR role. We'll be able to apply critical thinking and business acumen in HR, demonstrate strategic workforce planning and talent development, communicate HR values in business terms, and drive organization change and business performance. Now, before I begin to speak to the slide, I tried as much as possible to make the slide as basic as possible. I am speaking from the angle of the fact that the people who are in the target audience tonight are people who has at least a year, 2 years experience in HR upward, at least 2 to 5 years. And so those were the people I really had in mind when it comes to thinking professionally. If you are just starting in HR, I feel this is something you can begin to try to learn from now, and you'd see how you'd also grow very quickly, right? Um, it is no news to us that the workplace is evolving, and the pace is very, very. In fact, the pace is a leap. That's the way I can put it. Let me let me bring it to scope. Let me help us imagine it. So it was Robert Kiyosaki that said that the world changes, right? Something new changes, or things become obsolete every 18 months. Things become obsolete every 18 months. Now, let's imagine that we entered 100 level, right? And 100 level is about 4 months. Basically, we spend for 4 months in school, that's 8 months. There is 4 months break in between. So basically, it means that by the time one enters school, right, in 100 level, and is receiving the lecture that is receiving in that school, by the time you are coming out of that school, the knowledge that you received that you think is fresh is already 2.5 years old and is almost fading off and becoming irrelevant again in the business workspace. So imagine having to compete with that speed. Now, I had to use that example so that you can try to now imagine the pace at which we are contending with in the business space, right? The business space is volatile, it is very unstable, and so it has a lot of demand on us. It has a lot of demand on every single person, right? So everyone knows, it is no news that the workspace is evolving at a very, very fast pace, right? Technology, globalization, shifting workforce expectations have transformed how business operates. So we can no longer afford to be passive administrators. HR is no longer the people who you just hire because you need a secretary, right? The previous years HR were seen more or less like glorified secretaries, permit me to use that language, where their own is to just ensure that we don't run out of stock in the office, right? And then we make sure that people come early, we become class captains, and then we seek and mark attendance. And that was all HR was known for, right? But we've advanced way beyond that, right? You would also realize that in order to try to meet up with the pace of our advancement, it is the reason why even our professional body is even aligning themselves with CIPD and trying to do a lot of global networking so that the best and the least they can do for us is to put us at the foundational baseline and base level of what is expected of a global HR. However, through growth, and the best way to step up is not just in the body of knowledge you acquire, it must be in the place where you are able to take what you've learned and make it tangible and convert it to real value, right? So we know that for a long time, HR has been seen as a cost center, right? So when it comes to talking about anything that has to do with saving costs, HR is mostly the last people on management's mind to even call to the table to talk. But that is something we need to change, right? That's the table we need to turn. And what I'm going to try and do as much as possible is just lay the foundation tonight, lay and bring out basic things that we can pick up and learn, and once we build on it, we can run with it, right? So HR has moved from running basic administrative skills, just doing basic payroll skills, just, oh, let me just recruit, oh, let me just handle the logistics and the likes, right? We are moving to a point where we need to learn the skill and the art of influencing decisions. So what I'm just going to do, like I said, I want to try as much as possible to speak from my heart tonight, right? I'm just going to leave the screen on display. We can pick up 1 or 2 points from it while I just speak to the slides. Now, before I even come here, maybe I should do this. If you can type in the comment section, can you just highlight 1, 2, 3 things that is an issue that you are struggling with in your organization at the moment? The challenges you feel you are facing, the challenges that you wish you could find a solution to as an HR person. If you could just put that in in the comment section, let me just read one or two, right? So that we can, speak and move together. Okay, let's see. Retention strategies, okay. Does anybody want to drop another challenge that they seem to be facing? People management. Thank you so much. I believe I can even speak more. I can relate more to this people management, especially when you have to find the balance where you need to bring that leveling ground where the employees enjoy their work and the management don't think like they are spending too much. So we are thrown into the middle of speaking management language, but also ensuring that these people stay in the workplace. So some of the challenges that I really put in, right, is that one, we have limited business involvement in HR, right? Um, there are certain decisions that just happen, and then they call you after they've completed everything, and they just call you and say, "Oh, we've made this decision, go ahead and execute." Then you now come in and you begin to do something that is called damage control. You begin to think of how you tweak the world. You try to make the people see the best of the worst decision that has been made, you know, and how you still present the management as having the people's interest at heart, right? While delivering this bad news. And it is a lot, right? Because they still haven't come to the point. The entire employers, right? Not all employers have really come to the point where they understand and they see that, okay, HR is actually transitioning to the point where they are becoming business business partners also, right? If we are to do a rough statistics, it could be like a roughly 2%, right? So we have limited business involvement. We have struggles with giving data-driven decision. I've been in this space before, but how many of us sometimes we have this idea we want to throw out to the management, but to now go back and sit down and find the data to connect it is always difficult. So all it's just is in our head is just instinct. And because we're unable to use numbers and how and show to the managers how it will improve their profits or improve the business revenue, all those ideas are always shut down. Please just react in the comment section if I'm speaking your mind. If you felt like this before, that is part of what it is. It's part of our struggles, right? How we have to struggle with data driven, with generating data driven decision. We know how certain decisions is leading to poor retention strategies, is leading to poor people management. It is restricting us to really carry out the job that they are paying us to do, but we don't know how to use numbers to connect it, right? The third one is a relation with the first two. We do not have any influence at that table, right? And the other ones is that we have a difficulty in trying to now adapt to workforce change, right? And most times the difficulty is not directly or necessarily from us. The difficulty also has to do with the personality of the employer. It has to do with the rigidity of the system. And it's an irony because we are supposed to be the system. And so if you are flexible, the question that comes to your head is, if I'm flexible, how come the system cannot be flexible if I'm not managing the system? Right? That's part of the irony we basically go through. So based on all these things, it's also the reason why we keep asking ourselves, why is it that we are still on the sideline when we should be at the center of making business decisions? For lack of wanting to go into a lot of details, I recall something happening earlier this week, how we're having issues with a particular recruitment role. And then I came up with a strategy that was okay, approved by the management. and I went on to execute. And when I executed, we got our first set of people coming. After we had our first set of people coming, right, the management came in and they just went totally off script. And then I had to now step in to try to see how I can do damage control to manage those people. And when they were complaining too much, I now have to still come back to the point where I have to be on the management side to say, you know what, this is what we are giving. If you can't take it, it's fine, you can go. But deep down in my heart, I was pained. I could think of the stress I had gone through, the the mental stress to really bring out that idea, the rigor to defending that idea. I went as far as drawing up a budget, looking at the cost estimation, what the HR cost will look like, what the cost will look like, and what the revenue is, what the profit will be like. And after going through all that rigor, I'm watching my plan scattered. Right, I got out of this from the courage. I was creating something new, trying to modify and refine, and I thought I was making headway, only to be called into the office of the MD with his friends, and then they started saying something completely, totally off script, totally off our industry, something that cannot work in our industry. But yet, when we were done having that meeting, and when they were done talking, they said, "Tommy, you have to figure out how you make it work in our industry." And in my head, I'm like, where do I begin from? These are part of the issues we face. These are part of the issues we go through on a daily basis, right? And the question that becomes, how do we navigate this issue? How do we work around it? First, before I go to the next slide, again, like I said, the slides may have some form of technical aspect. I'm just here to speak as basic as I can so that everybody can flow with me, right? The question we now need to begin to ask ourselves is, how do I come to a point where I can begin to speak management English? I mean, we know what the challenges are. One of the reasons, or if I should do a rough poll, right? If I should take a rough poll right now, I know that some of the reasons why most people decide to go through CIPM and go through the certification is because we believe that it is supposed to bring us to that point where we are able to make those business decisions. And trust me, CIPM is doing their best, right? But the truth is, just like any school, you can take in the knowledge, but the application is where the real work is, right? The application is where the real work is. Now, we've been able to identify that these are the challenges we are going through. The question now becomes, how do we navigate these challenges, right? Um, we all know in our hearts, at least most of us know, that HR is not just about, oh, let me just go and create a policy, let me just go and make people adhere to things. It's about people's strategy. And when we are talking about HR being people's strategy, HR is the person that is expected to be a jack of all trades in an organization, but a master of one. And that master of one is your base work being HR, right? So you are expected to have a base understanding of anything your company is into. The technical aspect of your company, you are supposed to know it. You are supposed to be able to speak those languages. You are supposed to be able to speak in any kind of meeting. You are supposed to be able to speak in any kind of strategy meeting that they're having, right? They're supposed to be able to create processes, create standards of operations. At the same time, you're also supposed to learn how to collaborate with your people such that they don't feel like, oh, this guy is just there to just come and hijack whatever we are doing and then just take the shine. So there is a lot that is demanded of us as HR. There's a whole lot, right? First, the master of our basic skill that we are supposed to do is that we are supposed to know, come to a point where we are able to predict the future of our talent need and be proactive about it and not be reactive. Let me give a typical example. So imagine working in a startup and they say, oh, this is the vision of the organization. We want to get to this point. If you are looking for talent to come in, you cannot just sit down and say, okay, this is what they just need for now. No, you have to think of, okay, in the next 3 to 5 years, if things are changing, do these people have the grit? The people you are employing, do they have the ability to adapt to these changes? Or are some of them already futuristic enough to have the skills of that future that you're looking for? And you need to look at these things. And these are things you think about when you are recruiting people. These are things you think about. So you are not just about, oh, let me just fill the space. You are about, how is this person solving our problem? How is this person bringing a solution to the business need? And you are trying to navigate the best talent pool in a pool of uncultured people. And this is what I mean by uncultured, so that you don't get me wrong. They are uncultured in the sense that all the school taught them is just the baseline knowledge, right? These are just the basic technical knowledge you need to know. But there was no training, right? And I believe these are part of the places where we HR need to begin to try to let close the gap. There was no training where we come into collaborations with school to go into those schools to give those people an extra of what we'll be looking at for when they are coming to meet us at the table over there, at the other side. When we begin to teach them to craft their CVs the right way, when we begin to teach them to speak our language, which is to talk more about what they can offer us, not come and tell us about their school and how they finish with a first class, right? We are trying to now, so because there is that gap already, it is not a lot when people come into the recruitment room where beyond listening to what the person is saying, you are trying to figure out potentials. You are trying to see beyond what the person is saying. So you carry the garment of discernment of spirit, you carry the garment of a prophet upon you to begin to foresee into the future and try to fit the person into the future if the person is someone that can fit into the future, which is a lot of work, right? And yet, that alone is just one aspect of HR that you're supposed to be a master in. Before even talking about the other things you're supposed to just be knowledgeable about, right? The second thing we need to now learn to do also as part of our roles is to learn to have the skill like a cross. And this is what I mean by that. So we have the vertical and the horizontal line in every organization, right? Whereby we report upwardly and we report horizontally also, right? Or rather, we report upwardly and we collaborate horizontally. But being an HR, you don't just collaborate horizontally. What makes you a professional in your field? And these are part of the key things I'm just going to be dropping. So in the midst of my stories, I'm just going to be dropping certain key nuggets that I really want us to take and grab, right? One of the things that makes us skilled and respected is that as an HR person, first, you must be able to identify all collaborative skills and career paths that complement your job, right? You must be able to build some form of baseline knowledge of those skills. So, for example, I have a presentation as I'm giving today. It is just basic knowledge, and that's the reason why they have to teach a presentation skill, right? We may not necessarily need to be perfect in graphics design, but we should be able to make basic graphic presentations that engages our people when we are giving our presentation. In the same vein, we must be able to enter into the shoes of the skills that collaborate and make us better in our job. That is the horizontal aspect, right? Then we now need to upskill ourselves upwardly. That upwardly is in our own career profession. So everybody, not just HRs, but primarily HRs, you have that core responsibility to learn to harness these skills and bring a balance at the center. When you harness this skill and bring a balance at the center, that's when you can say that you have what it's called business acumen, where you can see an Excel spreadsheet and you can interpret it to a certain extent. And from the interpretation of that Excel spreadsheet, you can make people decisions that you can present to management, right? Part of the things we're also supposed to do is to learn the skill of diplomacy, right? Where we are able to pull people and make people have a lovely culture, no matter how stringent our policies may be. Remember, we are just policy keepers, right? We are just there's a word that my lead strategist used to say, but I can't remember the word. But basically, we are policy holders, we are policy keepers. The influencers and the creators of those policies are our top level management, whom to a very large extent, our influence on them is very minimal. And all they just do is that they channel what they want on us and we just put it out in paper, right? But when we've done it, sometimes we see it and we know in the depth of our heart that this is a rigid policy. But even in that rigid policy, we need to learn that people skill to be able to pull people together and help them navigate and have a good people culture. Because workplace culture is not the work, it is the people. Workplace culture is not the work, it is the people. And it's our responsibility to be able to create that good culture. Right? And I've already spoken to talent development, which is upskilling people. And so beyond all that I've said, right, we also now need to sit in the space of a coach and a mentor, where we are able to guide and coach anybody, regardless of their career path. Right? So what I'm just saying in a nutshell is that part of our role today is that we must be able to learn to speak beyond our professional jargons. We need to learn the professional jargons of every other department, learn it, so that we're able to speak to them in their own professional jargons when we want to get their collaboration to do what we need them to do. So let's look at statistics, let's look at numbers, so that I'm not just here to just talk stories. Let's look at numbers. Now, very respected companies did certain research and they said certain things about what happens when we become business partners, right? What happens in that organization? Because part of what it means to be a business partner is the ability to understand the company's vision and goals very well, be able to break it down and create an HR strategy that can align with it, and also help other departments also create visions that can align with the company goals. Now, statistics has proven that the impact of strategic HR is that companies with strong HR business alignment are 2 times more likely to be industry leaders, right? Organizations where HR plays a strategic role always report 21% higher profitability. Also, 90% of CEOs always want their HR leaders to be strategic business partners and not just administrators. But guess what? Most times, part of what is expected of us is to be able to interpret and bring into reality what even the CEOs cannot even explain with their mouths. So why am I saying all this? Which brings me to why we have to evolve. We have to evolve because a lot is placed on us. Most times, even the employers don't even know what they are demanding and requesting of us. But the good thing is this: the advantage of what they are giving to us and the advantage of the stress they are putting us through is that they make us better. They make us so skilled that we can handle any challenges. They make us so skilled that we can grow to a point where we can come back and consult for others. But for us to get to that point, we also need to learn that to become someone that thinks professionally, we need to learn certain basic things. And what is the first basic thing? We need to learn to think end to end. Unfortunately, based off of the way HR started generally, right, we have very few people who acquired the skill or who even has the skill to be able to think end to end. And thinking end to end is a really, really, really difficult skill to harness, right? It is something you have to keep working on and improving. So let's do a small test, right? I'm going to ask 2 questions. So I'm going to take out my screen right now, zoom out my screen so that I can see people's responses. So I'm going to ask you a question. I just want you all to respond in the chat, right? My first question is, what problem does um what problem does eating solve? Let's just respond in the chat. What problem does eating, EATING, what problem does it solve? I'm waiting for people's response in the chat. So in case you don't know what I said, right? What problem does eating solve? Can everybody hear me now? For a minute, I was thrown out.
We can hear you. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
We can hear you.
Okay, someone said provides you nutrition. Someone else said provides you hunger, satisfaction problem. Okay, now let's make it more interesting. Is eating the only way to solve that problem based on the responses you've given? So the people that responded to this answer this question: is eating the only way to solve this problem? Yes. Okay. Any other person? Okay. Israel, you said not the only way. So let me ask you, Israel, what other way can solve the problem you mentioned that eating solves, which is hunger? What other problem solves hunger? If you want to think about it, go ahead and think about it. While you are thinking about it, let me throw my second question. What problem does food solve? So the first one was what problem does eating solve? Now I'm asking what problem does food solve? Let's see. I want another set of people to respond to that, not the people that just responded. Food solve farming. Okay, let me rephrase. What problem does food solve in the body? This one is a this one is a generic problem. Okay, besides said food nourishes. Nourishes what? So this says hunger. So if food solves hunger, how come eating is also solving hunger? Okay, so the malnourishment of the body. Hunger satisfaction problem. Okay. You know what I just did? I just picked out different parts of the same process just to convince us a bit. Let me now put it this way. First, food solves the problem of growth, right? Food solves the problem of growth. However, for food to receive that nourishment that growth derives, it needs to eat, right? But for eating to happen, your body has to signal hunger. So the beginning of the process is hunger, followed by eating, followed by what? Getting food, and followed by getting growth. I don't know if you guys get that. So meaning that the full circle is that first your body triggers hunger in your body, whereby you see that you need to eat, right? That's the beginning of the thinking part, right? And then you move on to the next part, which is what? Eating. So first the trigger of hunger, then you have to take the action of eating. And what do you eat? Food, right? And when you eat that food, growth happens, nourishment happens, right? That is what happens when you think end to end. Now, if we are to bring it into scope, when we are saying, okay, we want to recruit a particular role, the first question we should ask ourselves is, what problem is this role coming to solve? How many people depend on this role? What is the impact of the decision outcome that this role gives us? And how does it affect growth? How does it affect profit? This is how we are expected to think as HR. But again, for us to come to this point, it takes practice. But these basic questions of asking basic questions of what, why, basically the 5 W's and 1 H, asking those basic questions is what will bring answers that will make you begin to think beyond what even the head of department is seeing. So the head of the department is saying, oh, I want to just fill this role fast so I can continue my operation. You are seeing beyond solving a temporary problem. You know why? Because in every downstream, what they are just focused on is that operation must not stop. But as an HR, you are supposed to think both as a consultant and as an operational manager. What is the job of a consultant? To anticipate problems, to embrace problems, to think about the solution of the problem. Meaning that basically as HR, even though every other person left project writing in school, you did not leave it. Let me take it that again. As an HR, even though everybody left project writing in school, you did not leave it. So if you paid somebody to help you do your project, it is that time you go back and relearn that skill. Because that skill, not the project now. For school, you might have done the project to get a grade. But for life, that is the skill you need for you to answer tough questions that you are going to be faced with as an HR person for life, or any other field you are in. Because I can see some people that are not HR, but they join this class. Any other field you are in, right? You need that skill. You need to learn to think problems, think probable solutions, and present 2-3 recommendations to management. When you are able to drop recommendations and numbers, that when this management will know that, okay, this HR is not just thinking of cost. They're actually thinking of how their solution affects the profit of the business. So what are your key players? First, you have 2 key players. You have external key players and you have internal. The first internal key player is you. And that key player being you requires that you have to submit yourself to growth. You have to submit yourself to grit, which is a growth mindset, resilience, and tenacity, right? You have to submit yourself to that. You have to push yourself to a point where you don't think about a short-term solution to your problem, where you're always thinking about who is impacted by your decisions, who is impacted by your actions, who is impacted by what you are doing as an HR person. When you do this, then other people, other departments can begin to collaborate with you. They begin to respect you. They begin to come to you for solutions and ideas. They begin to come to you to help them think the way management will think, so that they can present solutions to management that management will accept. So you are the first person that is going to be involved in stepping up in HR. When you do it, others will see it and they'll be able to partner with you. When you do it, others will see it and they'll be able to partner with you. So that's the first thing you need to know about what it means to think professionally. You need to learn to think end to end. You need to learn to think end to end. So how do we expand our influence? And I believe I've said it in everything we've said so far, right? So first, your influence starts from that thing that some of us dread the most, recruitment. For us, recruitment just seems like, okay, I'm pissed off. Let me just listen to some candidates that will back me up because they don't even know how to answer questions. Please begin to reshape your thinking about recruitment. Think about long-term goals, even from your recruitment. When you're able to do that, right, it becomes easier. Begin to try to learn and do it in other aspects of the organization. So start from recruitment. Start from your stand-up roll call that you do with people every morning when they come to work, right? Start from your training programs. Don't just do training programs because, oh, we need to train them, right? Sit down, observe their processes. Where is the bottleneck? What is causing a strain? What is making them land? What is not making them productive? Sit down, understand their pain points, understand what they really need. Try to think of yourself in their shoes and then try to research answers to those questions. Because if you have not asked those questions, you cannot answer those questions, right? When you are able to do that from your basic work, you begin to grow up, right? So you learn that. The next is you begin to learn automation and technology. If you've not implemented basic automation, even in your skill, right, in your basic skill as a recruitment person, how would you be able to recommend automation to other departments? So what it basically means is that you have to use yourself as a scapegoat, right? Use yourself as a lab rat to try out whatever you want to present to other people. When you are able to learn and use every other department and provide solution to every other department, right, it becomes easier. You begin to build yourself gradually into that boardroom. So don't start from the boardroom. Start from your department. Don't start from your department. Start from your basic work. Start from that work that has become a routine that you don't find joy doing. Begin to see that job as a problem you are trying to solve, as your basic way of trying to provide solutions to the problem that the company is trying to solve. That is where you need to start from. And that's how you build your influence upward. Because when you've learned all those basic things, then you can now begin to learn the complex things. So learn basic things like, so for example, if I'm bringing this person in, this is what they say is the salary. This is what the commission is. This is the cost of all the tools. Now, what should be the projected expectation given this person's ability? You need to begin to think to that point. But before you can think to that point, you must start by seeing every single thing you pick up as a problem. So what am I saying in a nutshell? The way to step up in HR, the way to think professionally is by treating everything that comes your way as a problem that you have to provide a solution to, as a problem you have to provide a recommendation to. That is the way to think professionally right now, because you have competitors. There is that looming question in our mind that will HR take the place of will AI take the place of HR? The truth is, the answer is yes and no. Yes to people who refuse to think professionally, to people who refuse to step up and use AI for what it is, which is a tool. If you do not see AI as a tool, AI will become the tool that sends you out. So unless AI as the tool that it is and use it to make yourself better. But for you to come to that point, AI is garbage in, garbage out. Go and learn the skill of AI prompting. Go and learn how to articulate your thoughts completely before you step into AI. Use AI to the point that people won't even know that you are using AI. Use AI to the point that people won't even know that you use AI to solve their problem. So unless this tool, that is the only way the tool will not harness you. So what am I saying? We are coming to a point where there is rapid change. And for us to catch up with that rapid change is not by treating our problem as routine, but by treating our tasks as a problem. Let me take that again. By stepping up and catching up in this rapid world, it is not by treating our job, our JD as a routine, but by treating every task as a problem we have to solve to bring about a solution to the company. And the company is all about what? Profitability and growth. So if HR does not involve, the business will look elsewhere for workforce strategy and will now take that final power completely away from you. So we need to work on acting now, becoming relevant. I could have focused on the technicality of this slides, right? But for some reason, I decided to come down to this base level to help us see that thinking professionally or stepping up in HR or becoming influential in the boardroom is not one big thing that cannot be achieved, but it is something that has to be practiced consistently, right? So what is going to be our strategic playbook now? How do you step up? I've mentioned it in all our conversations, right? The best way to step up is by developing your business acumen. And you do that by learning to understand every role, by learning to understand every department, by learning to understand how every department is important in the organization, by learning to understand the impact that each of them play, right? When you learn these things and you understand it and you try to put yourself in it, you begin to think more like a manager and you begin to become more valued. What's the other thing? Try to figure out statistics. Try to learn to find numbers. I would admit it is not every aspect of HR that you can tie to numbers. However, when you try to put yourself in the problem and when you try to conceptualize the problem in your head and try to think about it from the beginning to the end, you can try to go with that 3 questions, right, that I asked you. First, what is the solution that this problem is trying to solve, right? Are there other alternatives to this solution, right? If your answer to number 2 becomes a yes, then you are thinking, what are the other alternatives? The other way you can also treat it, right, and you can also develop yourself to that point, is to know that for every problem you are bringing a solution to, for every solution you are bringing, you are creating another problem. But you must be able to create a solution to the point that it has tackled and answered every major problem. It has tackled and answered every major problem. That way, you are building yourself to discuss in figures. And part of the basic ways you can begin to learn figures, right, is by doing things like this. Okay, in month 1, we had 10 staff. At the end of month 1, how many staff did we have left? Okay, still 10. Then you check in 3 months, we had 10 staff. Between those 3 months, how many staff left? Okay, 3. 3 divided by 10, you get your ratio. This is the percentage of your staff strength right now. Then you compare it for the next 6 months. You compare, are they dropping or are they increasing? Then you now go back. All the people that tendered resignation, what were their reasons? The only way they will give you genuine reasons is if you are able to create a good workplace, right? What were their reasons? Is it a trend? If it is a trend, then you know where your problem is and you know the problem you need to tackle, right? So that is how to work with numbers. So working with numbers is not necessarily always learning Excel sheets and learning complex formulas. It's just basically saying, and analytics is basically saying, figure out the patterns, figure out the trends, analyze the trends and patterns. That's basically all it's saying. And that way you'll be able to strengthen your leadership presence. How you strengthen your leadership presence, like I said earlier, is to learn the professional jargons of other departments so that when you are speaking to them from their expertise, and that's how they will respect you. Finally, you must be able to conceptualize the goal of the business and align whatever plan you are coming up with that goal. So as well as I say, okay, this is the problem the business is trying to solve. Where does HR come in and how do I show that HR is there to support this problem? Then the last part is leverage tools, right? Leverage technology, leverage tools. So what are our key takeaways? Number 1, we have transitioned in HR. If you think we are still transitioning, we are late. We have transitioned. In fact, we are way behind time, right? We have transitioned. So we have moved beyond traditional roles and we have moved to the point where we have no choice. We have to establish ourselves as strategic business leaders. We have to understand the business operations, no matter how technical it is, figure out a way to make it easy, right? We have to leverage numbers. We have to speak the leaders' language. So our key takeaway from this is this: we are no longer an administrative function. it is important that we have to develop our business acumen and our thinking faculty. We have to step up. We have to think end to end. We have to maximize the use of those three questions. What problem is this solving? Is this the only way to solve the problem? What other ways to solve the problem is there to solve the problem? Use the 5 W's and 1 H. What is the problem? Why is this a problem? How do we tackle this problem? Where is this problem emanating from? Who are the key beneficiaries? And who are the people that have to pay for these problems? We need to learn these things. And with this, I say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. I really hope that I've been able to communicate value. And I look forward to hearing from you and answering your questions. Thank you, Salva, to you.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent, highly insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's show appreciation. Let's give him his flowers. If you like to ask questions or you would like to comment, share a few thoughts around the subject matter, you have questions, you have something you want to say, share very quickly. If you do well to raise your hand, we'll enable you to unmute and ask your questions. Also, if you prefer to type your questions, the chat room is open and the facilitator will be scanning through just to check if there are any questions, comments, so that we can get your feedback. I'm checking through right now, and what I can see so far, I can see a lot of encomiums, accolades, people saying thank you, people applauding you, clapping for you, celebrating you for that excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still open to take questions. Is anyone willing to ask any question tonight? Anyone willing to share one or two experiences around the subject matter this evening? We'll be glad to have you speak. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we have the first person to say who will build the cart. Adaeze, you have the floor. So may please put on back your video if you don't mind. Adaeze, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, facilitator, Mr. Tommy. So talking about HR analytics, I did like to know if there is a way HR can use data like in terms of figures to do a presentation or to do a presentation. For instance, in terms of employee turnover, employee or the rate of employee retention. Is there a way HR can use data? I mean, if we check our world today, businesses are revolving around using data to make presentation. It is more relatable to the executive. So is there a way HR could use data in terms of numbers to do their presentation? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adaeze. Thank you for your question. And the answer to that question is yes. The truth is, whilst HR is like it is all about the unseen, it is also very much about the seen. Every employee in your organization are numbers. I mean, that's why we have staff IDs, right? So every employee in your organization are numbers. So if, for example, you want to do a presentation on staff turnover rates, right? I give an example of that. It depends on how far back you want to trace it. And the key things we are looking at first is, okay, how many staff did we have from month 1 to month 6, right? And from each of those months, what were their reasons for exiting? So in analyzing data, it's not just about analyzing numbers in terms of numbers, but it's about analyzing trends and patterns. It is not every time that our presentation may necessarily be in terms of numbers, but we can actually make it in terms of numbers, depending on what it is, and we can make a mix of both. So if, for example, I want to do analytics of our turnover rate, for example, what I'll just do is I'll draw an Excel table, do month 1, number of staff employed or number of staff in company at the beginning of the month is number of 50. Number of staff that left, 3. Reason for leaving, better pay, no flexible role, and that. What you've done is that you've done a mix of the numbers you are looking to do, and it's also giving you explanation all in one table. What they are really looking for is short answers, not presentation slides that is too bogus in too much words. So what they are basically looking for are just short answers and straight to the point reasons for why something is happening. So that's the best way to do presentation. So yes, we can present in numbers. I hope I was able to answer your question at this end.
Yes,
I
thank
really
you.
am.
Okay,
Yes, you're able to answer it. Thank you.
Alazan, you can go next. Please, if you have questions, comments, contributions, please raise your hands. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Alazan, you have the floor.
All right. Hi, Tommy.
Hi,
So
Hassan. Good to
much
see you.
for this and insightful. Good to hear from you too. Thank you so much for this an amazing and insightful session tonight. It was really, really great to touchlight all aspects of the world we need to take home. A lot of things we need to take home today. Right, just to chip in one or two things before I ask my right. Just as Tommy has said in summary, human resource we are no longer in that olden days of a personnel manager management again. We are now a strategic human resource partner. So we need to understand the business. Myself, I train as much as possible to go to my electrical department, to the mechanical department, to know how they lubricate their engines, to know how they fix these electrical faults. When I'm handling interview for my electrical department, asking them question about the electrical part and the mechanical, the HOD will be like, Hassan, are you from engineering? This thing. I say, no, I studied accounting. I should be able to this your business. I should be able to know what the job role is before I'll be able to advertise well when I'm doing my advert, when I'm doing an advert for a particular role. So I cannot just come up say that I want to, as a recruiter or as a talent specialist, I want to advertise a role and I don't have an idea about this role. I should be able to sell my organization to the candidate before they get attracted to my organization. It's not all about recruiting or filling a role. It's about getting candidate. And how do you get the right candidate? Is by letting the candidate know the value of what your organization are, who your organization. So this is my input about talent retention strategies. Now there's something with exit interview when we do to ensure that yes you know exact reason why the employee is leaving, if it is the pay, if it is the culture fit, or if it is any, to be frank with you or to be honest, majority of these employee will not come with facts. Most of them will come with lie that no, I have professional career, I'm going for master, I have a family issues that I need to go and resolve, which is not the most of these people have enough already. They want to go and join another company. For them to tell you the truth that this is what I have on grant, so that you can communicate to the management that okay, this talent is good for us and we can't let this talent to go. What do we retain this person? How do we go as human resource strategic partner to solve this problem? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Thank you, my guy. When Hassan started speaking, I started getting scared. When your guy wants to ask question, you begin to fidget. Let me open the answer a bit. It was one that tutored me during CIPM when I was taking my classes, but that's by the way. So to answer that question, the truth is, the first thing we need to understand is that before any person should say they want to drop their resignation letter, they had left the organization a long time ago. Their heart had left. They just didn't want to sit at home. They didn't want to sit idle. And there is something that someone said that I really appreciate. Emmanuel Fitz, I respect that man so much. and Mr. Yemi Fashion also collaborated with this, that I think it's that time you stop doing exit interview and start focusing more on stay interviews, right? And what does stay interview mean? On a periodic basis, maybe every 2 months, right? Or maybe every 3 weeks. Just take a tour around, ask random questions with your staff. Oh, what's still keeping you here? What's the thing you really wish you could change, right? What is the reason? What's that thing that if it comes today, it will take you off from this place, like you are gone? When you ask those questions from that point, that's where you really get the real answer. And that's where you can begin to throw suggestions open. So that if at the end of the day, even if management don't accept the suggestions, right, you have your track records of surveys that you can use as backup later when they bring it up to say, why are people leaving? And say, well, I said this to you, even though they are not being forthright in their exit interview. This is what they've spoken to me in confidence as to why they had to leave. So that is how to deal with exit interview. Um, Thank you so much, Azan. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have Israel next, then Tina will go after Israel. Israel, please, you have the floor.
Good evening, my amiable doctor. Good evening, facilitator. Thank you very much for this insightful session. I just want to chip in this before my question, because some environment can be so toxic. For instance, they might see it as cross-functioning, trying to see into what they do in this department. You know, you talk about learning their professionalism, learning their language and all that, so that you can able to get one or two insights. How do you handle such department? For instance, you go to an IT person, you know, trying to share knowledge, and he's trying to say, this is not your department, what you want to be master about. How best, and you want to grow, you want to get fit into some of these departments. How best can you handle that? Then secondly, I joined the class, I joined the session late. What can we take as key difference between being an HR business leader and being an HR business partner? Because what is common now is HRBP, you know, something like that. So please, can you just share more light on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Israel, for your question. So let me start with your second question before I move to the first. For your second questions, I believe they are all just nomenclatures, right? And I believe it is the employer's way of expressing the fact that they want HR who would be in their business and would contribute to their business. Typically, what we are talking about here, right? What does it mean to be an HR business partner? To be able to contribute to the growth of the business, to be able to understand the root of the business to the point that you know about the business and can defend the business anyway. I work in renewable energy, right, where they are into the sale of solar. As I am, if I should start talking to you about our product, you would think I'm a salesman. I remember when I went for an exhibition and I met with someone whom I've never heard about solar and she didn't really know so much. By the time I was done, she was like, this is the first time someone would sit down and explain solar to me this way, right? And that's what you should also do. Yes, it may not necessarily concern you, you're not a salesperson, but you should be able to know your business enough. Because if you don't know the root cause of your business, like the nitty-gritty of your business, how would you be able to provide solutions? How would you be respected? You keep being seen as the cost center. And that's just the truth. Right. I mentioned in one of the trainings that I did for my for the staff in my organization that most people's misconception, especially people who are at the base level, is that they think the way to career growth is by changing jobs. The way to career growth is by getting involved in the business. That is it. So that's the first part. An HR business partner is basically someone who has developed himself to the point where he begins to provide solutions to the business. It's as simple and as straightforward as that. Business leader or business partner, they are all nomenclatures. Most times, business leaders now become people who are partnered with business for a long period of time and they've gathered experience. Now, to speak to the second part, the first thing we need to understand, right, is that that's where emotional, people skill, and diplomacy comes in. Let's look at the reality of who we are as HR. Number one reality is that people don't like HR because of our position. They think we are for management, but the reality is that we are not for management, we are not for staff, we are for the system. If the system can be sustained, then the company can stand. But people think we are for management. For most people, the only time they see HR is when there's a problem or when there's an issue. People can barely separate you from the position. So first things first, before you can learn more about that business, you must be first open and friendly. You must come to a point where you can create a neutral environment around yourself, right? Where you can also support the department. So when there is an issue, you are forced to say, oh, how can I help? So until you build their trust as a people person, you cannot come to a point where you understand the nitty-gritty of their business. And that's just the truth. So you need to learn to build that. Like you need to learn to build a relationship with the people first before even coming to learn about this. In fact, just try and create that friendly environment. You can come from the point of, guy, Alpha, I want to go and buy a mother Alpha, do you know any joint around it? Just find a way around it. But that's where your people skills comes in, really. And that's just it. I hope I was able to answer your question, Israel. Thank you so much.
Tina,
Okay.
Tina, you have the floor. Tina will be providing the last question or comment or both tonight. Tina, you have the floor, please.
Lisa, can you help me from your end? I'm clicking out from mute, but it's not okay. It's worked. Go ahead,
Tina,
Tina.
don't be shy. Tina, don't be shy. We are here for you.
Can you hear me now? Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Tina. Okay. So one of them is concerning retention. So currently now I'm having an issue with getting wants to leave, but the management we are ready to make an increase for him to stay because he's actually one of our oldest staff. But the issue here now is the percentage increment was not released to me by the management, and management insists that I look for a way to retain this particular staff. So I'm kind of at a crossroad because this employee wants to know the percentage before he leaves, and I have only 1 week left to convince this employee to stay back. And then also I have another issue of people management, like I said earlier, and also with compliance issue. And one of the things you stated earlier about the department, because when there are issues in this department, it's maybe when they are done with discussing the issue, they can just call the HRO and they will be like, come in and then send a query to this person. I don't want to be in the position of an administrative HR. I want to be involved in each of these departments. I want to understand how each of these departments are being run and the policies in each of these departments as well as their procedures. But as of now, I am not in a position for that, and I think that is limiting my knowledge or how my policies affect the people per se, or to come in and make some strategic decisions. So I don't know if there's something I could actually do in such situation to change my circumstance, and I mean the issue at hand at the moment, to improve. So thank you.
Okay, so if I hear you clearly, the first issue is
Hello,
you
sir.
have been. Can you hear me clearly? Tina, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. So I said if I hear you clearly, right? The first issue is not okay, she's still on the phone. The first issue you have is that you've been given a task to retain an old staff, and they are not willing to release what they have in mind. They want to see what you come with. Okay. I may not be able to treat this out in this session. Reason is we may have to have a sit down to understand what your workplace looks like. We would have to understand what the salary band for each staff look like. We have to understand. So there's a lot of asking and understanding that would seem more of unveiling confidential things, and it's not something that can be done in an open class like this, right? You could either reach out to our host. I'm very sure he can be able to do the help you with that, or you could reach out to me also on the HR mentorship group, and we can try to see how we can figure out one or two things out, right? But if I'm to give a generic answer, I think the first thing you need to understand is trust. Understand his years of experience, understand what the required cadre, right? What the required cadre is for people with that years of experience. So, for example, if it is someone, okay, she's still here. If it is someone that has spent 10 years in a particular role as an officer, but the person already has the skill and ability to become a manager, right? You need to now understand, okay, if it's supposed to be in this cadre, what is the people in this cadre across board in our industry? What is the range of the salary that they are collecting, right? When you understand what the range of the salary they are collecting is, that's where you now have to go back to the table to now understand, okay, what is the financial capacity of the company? You may have to probably beat the finance team there that, okay, what do you think we can afford that it will not break bank and the company will be able to and subsequently pay, right? But at the same time, I feel like I have an issue with your performance review system. It means that probably your performance review system in your organization is not consistent and there is no clear employee life cycle document that is made known to people to determine what their growth looks like. So your question is screaming that there's a lot of issues with your HR system structure or the company structuring that would require more of a one-on-one conversation to be able to handle and address, right? So for that first question, it will require more of a one-on-one to address before we can suggest solutions. Now, to the second one of wanting to be involved in every other department, well, there's no two ways about it than to make yourself available, right? Uh, you'd have to leave your office more often, right? If it is an operational floor, visit the operational floor more often, gist with the people while they are working. Do a mix of management by observation and do a mix of asking questions, but in a friendly manner, right? So when you go in, okay, go to the organization for go with like chilled water, give the people that are working on the floor, observe what they are doing, how they are doing it, and you're like, these things that you people are doing like this. What if you do it this other way? What will happen? So part of the ways you can make people answer questions is by throwing open-ended questions to them, or throwing questions that make it seem as if you're in doubt, like, is this the only way this can happen? And then they are forced to push out and talk about how skilled they are in the job, and you begin to gather the knowledge. So basically, it's just more about understanding and having that people skill. So when you go out more and you sit with other departments more and you understand their processes more, then you now come to the point of research to understanding, okay, how your policy helps that department and how your policy is also how it also impacts other departments. So it's a blend of first people communication, people blending, going out more, being more in the face of other people and show them that you are here to support them, right? So a blend of researching and to a blend of now trying to think end to end to see who is impacted by what. Having the understanding that a department's output is another department's input. And I think with that, you'll be able to work around it. So I hope I've been able to give you answers to your questions. Please feel free to reach out to me for the one-on-one and for further conversations regarding your first questions. And our host, sir, you are very welcome to also give us answers, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this privilege.
Thank you so much, Tony Kembe. This has been an excellent presentation. You have also responded to the questions and to the contributions in a very dynamic, interesting, and engaging manner. Ladies and gentlemen, you know how we do it. This is time to voice our appreciation to our facilitator for tonight. You are free to unmute and say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank
Tommy.
you.
Thank you so much.
I'll make sure you come back again.
Thank you,
I will
Facilitator.
try. I'll try to be back again. Thank you so much. Still, I'm dropping a message for you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for the privilege once again. I do not take it for granted. I am truly honored by this. Thank you so very much, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
All right, sir.